Thank you for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, regulatory actions, and political maneuvers in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact your freedoms.
Please support the State of Freedom by becoming a monthly supporter or member of the Warrior Circle, or by advertising your business, your nonprofit, or your event with us. Go to freedomstate.us. We are bypassing the mainstream media cartel and the establishment political parties in Louisiana and coming directly to you, spreading the uncensored voice of freedom across Louisiana and beyond. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
Well, the legislative session is over, and while plenty of bills came and went, a handful stood above the rest to us. Some protected fundamental rights, some advanced long overdue reforms, and some have the potential to reshape Louisiana for years to come. Today, Chris and I reveal each of our favorite 3 bills of session. We were supposed to do that yesterday, but we ran out of time. We will break down what they actually do, whether lawmakers protected the original intent or watered it down or completely stinking massacred it, who voted for them, whether they're officially law today. And welcome to the State of Freedom, everybody, where we're grounded in faith and the Constitution, where we're committed to giving voice to the truth and living with courage and taking action. It's Thursday, if you can believe it. Praise the Lord. It is
Praise the Lord.
June
Praise
4th,
the Lord.
10 a.m. Central. And I'm Danielle Walker. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Doing well, Danielle. How are you?
I'm excellent. And we are coming to y'all live on Voice of the People USA, TV and radio network, Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook, probably other places too. Please take a moment, hit the thumbs up. It helps us out so much. Share this with your friends. Hit share on Facebook if you're watching. Give us some stars. Boost us, whatever you can do. Retweet us. We love all that. It's just helping us out. We want to make sure that people across the state of Louisiana and beyond can hear the truth about what's happening here. And you can also catch us later on our audio-only platforms. Wherever you listen, we're probably there. So with that,
Wherever you are, you know what, Danielle, wouldn't be a great theme for the show. Wherever you are, we're there.
I feel like someone did that before us. All right. Well, let me read the scripture of the day this morning, and we will get ourselves in the right headspace to tackle some of these issues. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. And it says, "Aspire to lead a calm and peaceful life as you mind your own business and earn your living, just as we've taught you. By doing this, you will live an honorable life, influencing others and commanding respect of even the unbelievers. Then you'll be in need of nothing and not dependent on others." And the phrase "mind your own business" is also translated as keeping your covenants or keeping your promises. So the encouragement here by the Apostle Paul was that we're to stay diligent and focused on keeping and fulfilling the promises we've made as we live our lives calmly and peacefully. And that's not just for us, it's also so that others who don't yet believe in Jesus would see us and realize that there's something different and honorable and attractive about the way that we live. The Lord expects that of us, and it's for us to live that way amongst those who believe the same way we do and amongst those who don't. So take a deep breath, and I'll pray that the Holy Spirit helps us. Holy Spirit, help us today. Help us to say what needs to be said with a calm and peaceful attitude, and help us to keep our mouths shut when we need to keep our mouths shut, and help us to have self-restraint, and help us to live as honorable messengers for you. We love you, Lord, and we just ask you that you would guide us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Chris, I needed extra prayer this morning because these bills, these were bills we felt very passionate about, and some of them met extremely ugly fates. And that's really hard. That's really hard to take.
Yes, yes, it is. And I don't know whether we were on the air yesterday, Danielle, or whether we were off air, but I mentioned that it seems like a disproportionate amount of our time is devoted to resisting and overcoming bad legislation,
Yeah.
rather than advancing good legislation. And I really do believe that that is because, sadly enough, there's a disproportionate percentage of bad legislation coming through than there is good legislation. I think that's sad. It's not just psychological for us. I think it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
We have to devote a substantial amount of time to resisting, purging, or killing bad legislation because there's so much of it. And while we do have good success in getting good legislation through, sometimes it's extraordinary legislation that 99% of every citizen in Louisiana would read or look at and say, no question, we got to have it, ends up getting gutted and killed. And it's very sad. And that is the direct operative influence of corrupt special interests in
It
our
is.
legislature. There's no
It is.
question about it.
Chris, your mic is the wrong mic. I think it's going through your computer. Are you able to, do you want to just see if you can fix that
Yeah,
real quick?
sure.
And I was
You-
thinking,
I might have to come back in. I'm not sure. I
I
might
don't
have
know.
messed up what I am.
Oh, well, we'll just leave it. We'll leave it.
I mean, is it, you can hear me okay, huh?
Yeah, it's just not as good as usual.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's okay.
I'm probably
Well,
not as good as usual either, so at least it's consistent.
that's not true. All right. Well, okay. So I had this thought this morning when I was getting ready, and that is, well, I listened to a lot of Susan Kokenda. Shout out to the Promethean ladies. Drop us a note in the chat if you love the Promethean ladies, if you follow them. I think they are just doing such a service of good to, to mankind right now with the insights that they have. They are just so knowledgeable. But one thing they do on their show that we haven't done, and we haven't done this in a while, I was just thinking, they always talk about their background and why why they are where they are and why they can speak into the issues they're so knowledgeable about. And so I thought about that this morning, and I was like, well, if people are new to the State of Freedom, if they're watching us or they've been watching us for a little while, they're probably like, gosh, who are these two really good looking people who are talking about Louisiana policy, and where did they come from? Where did they come from? So I thought maybe, Chris, why don't you can go first, but I know you practiced law for a long time in the state of Louisiana, strong constitutionalist, big believer in criminal justice and the rights of people in the Constitution. And do you want to just talk a little bit about what led you to advocacy and to the place, where you found yourself inside the Capitol fighting for our constitutional rights as individuals?
Well, I would say that there was nothing immediately precipitating it, Danielle. I've been involved in politics in one form or another since I was very, very young, since probably the age of 6, when my mom and dad basically dumped us out on the corner of a street with Woody Jenkins push cards to get out and go up to the doors of residences and pitch for Woody Jenkins when he was running either for the U.S. Congress or for the state Senate. And so our parents instilled in us from a very young age the importance of advocating for the good and advocating for constitutional principles, even before we really even knew what that was. We were in the habit of doing that even before we even knew why. Our parents just instilled in us
Yeah.
the importance of not staying on the sideline. And certainly our parents didn't stay on the sideline. My dad was very active in the Republican Party for many, many years. He was head of the state central committee. He was very involved in Reagan's conventions and it just in political advocacy for a long time. My mom founded the first pro-life pregnancy referral center in the state up in Shreveport and was a strong pro-life advocate for many, many years. And so we just knew that whatever particular form it took, in one way or another, we were going to be involved. And now more specifically, if you had told me 6 or 7 years ago that I would be sitting here today hosting an increasingly broad-reaching political podcast and have founded Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, I would have said, I don't know about that. I doubt it. But it really was. If there was an immediate precipitation, it would probably have been the 2020 presidential election,
Yeah.
when it just became very, very obvious that that election was hijacked. And I thought, and and I were sitting around talking and saying, if they can do this, if they can steal a presidential election, where are we in our country now? And are we too far gone? Are we irreversibly gone? Or is it possible to fight and get this back? And we knew that we had to do something. I also knew that I was familiar with the 10th Amendment and the Ninth Amendment to the U.S. Constitutions, and I had come to the conclusion that the federal government was possibly irreversibly corrupt. I didn't believe necessarily that it was, but I knew that we had very significant problems, and I knew that our founding fathers had given us two bulwarks against federal encroachment and against federal corruption in the form of the Ninth and 10th Amendments to the United States Constitution, and the visible personification of those two amendments exists right here in Baton Rouge in our state capital. And so that's why I leaned toward state advocacy work, in particular legislative advocacy work, because I knew that if we're going to save our state, we're going to have to make our legislature once again the robust antidote to federal encroachment that our founding fathers intended it to be. So that's why I'm in the state legislature. That's why I spend what seems like 48 years there every 3 or 4 months period during the year. But it is well worth it because I think that really is ground zero, Danielle, of this fight. The last point I'll say is this. Practicing law for 20 years is something that doing a lot of constitutional civil rights litigation, you sort of see the inside, the judicial aspect of all of this, and you understand how constitutional rights and how the provisions of the Constitution and criminal provisions, because I did a lot of criminal work as well, how that is fleshed out in real time, in real life. So I think I have sort of a theoretical understanding of the Constitution and the law, and really a ground zero practical appreciation for it. So I think I'm reasonably well equipped to be able to talk about these issues, and certainly with your assistance and dutiful reprimands, I think I'm doing. I think that I'm doing reasonably well.
Amazing. No, you're incredible, Chris. You do such a great job, and I think I was thinking that our backgrounds just lend themselves so well together because mine is, I was in D.C. for 14 years and I worked in international government affairs. I traveled to very, very frequently Africa, less frequently the Middle East, but very familiar with what's going on there. And then I moved to New York to the belly of the beast and worked for Pfizer and did public policy there. So I've engaged with government really at the highest levels, presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, commerce ministers. And I coached executives in how to deal with those figures. And so kind of, you delve into the nitty gritty of the policy, and I, in a lot of ways, I think translate that for everyday people because that's what my background is. Taking the complex and making it more simple, making it understandable for all of us lay people out here who don't sit down and read the 3,000 pages of text laid out in a single bill in a single
And
bill sometimes.
and Danielle, that's just your warm up. That's just your warm up. That's before you even get into the meat of the run.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to spend a minute today because it occurred to me we've got a lot of new followers on Facebook. We've got a lot of new followers on Rumble specifically, and I think we're doing okay. I mean, YouTube continues to suppress us. X, we do reasonably well, but I just know that we have a growing number of people who follow us, and you're wondering why in the world. Where did these people come from? Did they come from nowhere? We didn't come from nowhere. I did leave Pfizer to start this endeavor in 2023, and we've done episodes where we talk all about kind of the genesis of the podcast, and we don't need to get back into that this morning. But I just wanted to reintroduce us or introduce us to those who may be watching who didn't have a clue why we're here. And when I met you, Chris, I knew that we had to get together because you were telling the truth about politicians. You were the only person I'd met since I moved back to Louisiana from New York who had the receipts. And that's what this show is about. It's about bringing the receipts. The receipts have nothing to do with personalities. The receipts have nothing to do with personal preferences, likes and dislikes. Or relationships. The receipts are the votes. The receipts are the words spoken inside the committee rooms and on the floors of the Senate and the House. And that's what we're bringing to you today. And that's what we'll continue to bring to you.
Yes, and I'd be remiss if I didn't just very briefly, before we go on, Danielle, tell the story about how I met you. I was down in Homa one evening. I'd been asked by Danielle's nonprofit group, We the People, which is a great organization, to go down and speak on legislation. And I had never met them before. And I went down and I proceeded for about 45 minutes or an hour just to absolutely rail on these legislators and on legislation that I thought was horrible and how they were killing very good legislation as well. And I named them all by name. And really, I did not mince words. My goal was not to be particularly genteel that night. I was not in a particularly good mood, in fact. And when it was over with, I was sort of heading toward the door, and I was like, well, they're probably never going to have me back. And all of a sudden, you walk up to me and start talking to me about all the things that you're doing and working on and so forth, and how we need to find a way to work together. And here we are. And that is how it started. I was headed toward the door, and you were smart enough and prescient enough to see how maybe there could be a good symmetry between the two of us. And here we are. What is it? 400 or so podcasts later.
This is episode 404.
And I could not possibly be having any more fun, Danielle.
Yeah, we are having a lot of fun. We hope we're making it fun for y'all too. We want to make sure that everyone is extremely informed about what's happening in Baton Rouge. And in previous years, we have kind of raced through the review of the legislative session. And I think that we've really done ourselves, our work, and the public a disservice in racing through that way. So this year we're going to be a lot. We're just going to drag this out as long as it takes to get through the legislation because it deserves attention and people deserve to understand the nuance of impact that it's going to have on their pocketbook and on their life. So that's what we're going to get into today. Chris, why don't we start out with the first bill that that was on your favorite list? And that's SB 215 by Patrick McMath. This is one you fought very, very hard for. You were so encouraged. And I just remember you being really thrilled to see this on whenever we started digging into legislation because you felt like it was long overdue. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. And, this bill in particular, Danielle, was informed by my background as a constitutional and civil rights and criminal defense lawyer. And so I have a particular eye for legislation that either works an injustice to I guess, the criminal defense enterprise or as it relates to the Constitution. And so I saw this bill, and just by way of background, Danielle, there are about 1,500 or so Louisiana citizens who were convicted of capital crimes, either murder or something heinous, which will require them either to die in prison or get the death penalty. One of those two things. Those are capital crimes. About 1,500 of them who were not convicted by a unanimous jury because at the time that they were convicted, our Supreme Court had not declared non-unanimous jury verdicts in those cases unconstitutional. So when the court declared non-unanimous jury verdicts in capital cases unconstitutional, you have these people sitting in jail who had been convicted by less than unanimous jury. And the question is, what do you do with them? And the thought that I had, if you had one or two jurors on those juries who had seen all of the evidence and had decided that they were not guilty, that's 20%, roughly of a jury. When you're talking about the consequences of the deprivation of liberty or even life, that has to be reviewed. So how do you do it? You can't go back and automatically give them all new trials. What do you do? So Senator McMath brought a mechanism that would allow administrative review of all 1,500 of those cases to determine whether or not there was an injustice perpetrated on those defendants, and ultimately whether or not they are in fact innocent or guilty. And I just thought it was extraordinarily important, Danielle, as I told you the other day, if there's one or two of those people, and it may be more, who are sitting in jail, who are not guilty of what they're being imprisoned for, we have a fundamental moral, legal, and constitutional obligation to ensure that they receive relief and justice. It's critical. Just as Thomas Jefferson said many, many years ago, I would rather 100 men go free than 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man be stripped of 1 minute of his freedom. And that's exactly how I feel. So this was a very, very good bill. It was an outstanding bill, one of my favorite bills. And ultimately, sadly enough, it was killed. I believe, I'm not even
It died.
sure.
It wasn't killed.
Yeah.
It died a natural death, unfortunately, a death of starvation. It started out in Senate Judiciary B, and only the Democrats voted against it. I can't account for that because they're typically in favor of criminal justice reform efforts, but they probably just weren't in agreement with Senator McMath that particular day. He might have upset them about something else. I have no idea. It doesn't make sense that they voted against it because we usually tend to side with the Democrats on matters of criminal justice. But
Yeah, and I asked Senator McMath about it. I talked with him. Senator McMath is a very well-liked state senator, I'm very, very disappointed. I'm very disappointed, and I'm going to continue to raise this issue more and more and more frequently. And I'm determined, absolutely determined, next session to make sure that there is good legislation brought in this regard. I don't understand why we're constitutional conservatives. We believe in the rule of law. Why it would not be just as important for Republican legislators to get this issue right as it is for them to ensure that a multi-billion-dollar corporation can roll a pipeline through somebody's property. And you know what the difference is, Danielle? I believe and I think this is sad, and I think it's a testament to unfortunately, the operative supremacy of the flesh in the hearts of men and women. Too often, these defendants can't do anything for these politicians. They can't do anything for them. They can't hurt them. They can't help them. They can't donate money to them. They can't even vote. So what can they do to us? So they're not a priority. They put them on the back burner. They don't care. And once again, they allow an opportunity to redress what I think is potentially a very, very profound injustice to go unaddressed. And I think it's extraordinarily, extraordinarily sad. So I'll just
yeah,
leave it at that. But I
yeah.
do believe that we will have good opportunities next session.
I certainly hope so, and I'm sure Senator McMath, I know he felt passionately about this, so hopefully he will plan to bring it back. The unfortunate thing is it got called in the Senate, right? And I think they just kept passing over it, so it never made it to a vote.
And that's another thing. Danielle, and I promised myself that I was going to maintain a decorum today of calm and temperamental balance here. I've made that commitment to myself. But now that you mention that, the ultimate indignity here is that they didn't even vote on it.
Yeah,
You know, they say the opposite of love is not hate, the opposite of love is indifference.
right.
And when you don't even vote on a piece of legislation that's extraordinarily important, you're not just saying, "Oh, I hate it and so I don't like it, so I'm going to vote against it." You're saying, "I don't even care enough about it to give it a public hearing or to give it a public vote." And I think that is what is extraordinarily shameful.
Yeah, it is extraordinarily shameful because they had no problems hearing and passing laws that infringe upon every freedom we have. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
this is why we have to start every episode with scripture and a prayer, because otherwise we would just completely burst into flames on air. Uh, let's go into the next
And you've
one,
only
Chris.
done that, and you've only done that one time on a
Maybe
very
twice.
early episode, and we cut away quickly. While they didn't get to see the full inflammation.
All right, Chris, your next favored bill, HB 709 by Representative Mark Wright. It was his Administrative Procedure Act, and this was a great bill. We talked about it for, I think, several weeks. We talked about this bill, and I'm pretty sure you even testified in favor of it.
Yes, and Representative Wright is another very well liked legislator, and has built a good rapport with both Republicans and Democrats. And I loved this bill because it's a bill that would require routine accountability by all of these administrative agencies that we have in the state of Louisiana and all these boards and commissions and all their rules and regulations. Routine accountability before the legislature. To go before them regularly and routinely and justify your existence and justify your rules, your regulations, all the onerous requirements that you impose on businesses and individuals throughout the state. Come in and justify them. And before you come in and propose a new rule or a new restraint on individual liberty or freedom or businesses, you have to have in mind and in hand two rules and regulations that you're going to give the axe to, or don't come before us. And I thought it was just outstanding. Also, anytime there's a rule or regulation that is implemented, it automatically sunsets a year from that date unless the agency goes back before a legislative subcommittee and justifies its continued existence. This bill, Danielle, when it comes to what I call the state version of the Chevron doctrine, and the Chevron doctrine on the federal level is the doctrine that allows all these unnamed, unelected bureaucrats on the federal level and all these agencies to enact all these rules and regulations that go way beyond their original statutory authority. So they're basically mini legislators and mini kings, and there's no accountability. Fortunately, the Chevron doctrine on the federal level has been very significantly rolled back, and that's exactly what needs to happen in the state of Louisiana because we have way too many rogue administrators, rogue regulatory agencies in Louisiana that are simply not being held to account to the body, namely the legislature that created them and authorized their operation and their existence. That's what it comes down to, and it's I was so happy about this bill. I didn't think there would be. I did not think that it would realize the ultimate bad result that it did because it wasn't. And I mean no disrespect to conservative firebrands in the legislature. We need them. I thank God for them every day. But this bill was brought by someone who tends to be much more moderate, but understands exactly the issue that we've been talking about here. And still, the legislation could not get through. And I'm deeply, deeply disappointed in this.
Yeah, it passed House and Governmental Affairs in an 8-4 party line vote. It was recommitted to appropriations, and that's where it got stalled out. And Chris, I think you're calling it the state version of the overturning of the Chevron doctrine is probably not giving it enough credit, because the overturning of the Chevron doctrine doesn't do anything to get rid of those regulations. It just says that they don't have the right to make the regulations. So I think they either have to voluntarily repeal them, or they have to be sued individually, like on an individual regulation basis, right, to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction that you made, Danielle. The reversal of the Chevron doctrine on the federal level really has largely prospective application going forward, whereas rights legislation requires them to go in and justify rules and regulations going back decades potentially. And so you're exactly right. I really think there's really more of a fundamental house cleaning
Yeah.
statutorily that's going on the state level with this legislation. And Danielle, so it doesn't surprise me, I'm sure it doesn't surprise you the more I talk about this, that this would be precisely the type of legislation that institutional bureaucrats would want to axe, would
Yeah.
want to kill, because they don't want things to change. You think they want to be held routinely accountable for what they're doing before the legislature? I don't think so, and this bill would have absolutely required it. And so there's no doubt. There's no doubt that there was probably very much behind the scenes, but there was a lot of pushback against this, I'm sure.
And we just want to remind the viewers, in Louisiana, we have a 100% executive team that is quote unquote conservative Republican. We have a conservative supermajority in the entire legislature. And this is the kind of crap that can't get passed.
Exactly. And every one of these Republicans, Danielle, I absolutely can assure you, and we know them all by name, every one of them ran on a platform of constitutional reform and conservative governance. This legislation is the absolute textbook example of precisely what they ran on. And yet they're not coming through, despite, as you said, a 2/3 supermajority in both houses. This is the thing, Danielle, that absolutely frustrates citizens across the state. This is the reason why Louisiana citizens are so disgruntled, so upset, and feel so alienated from their government. When good bills like this, for no good reason, are killed or not allowed to advance.
Yeah, yeah. And it could have passed, right? It could have easily passed if they would have moved it along, but they chose not to.
They chose not to, and not to beat this too badly. But again, a vote, you and I have always said that even if you lose, the ability to have a full floor vote is vitally important to our advocacy work, because we're able to show what Republicans voted this way, what Republicans voted this way, and we always, of course, say them by name. By avoiding a vote, they get what they want and also diminish transparency, their own transparency and their own accountability.
Yeah, they continue to operate in the shadows whenever they wanted to be public officials.
So they operate in the shadows to kill legislation that would address countless bureaucrats who are operating in the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Chris, let's move on to your next bill in your favored column. That's House Bill 1008 by Representative Chuck Owen. I really love this one as well. This is his academic free speech, kind of anti-retaliatory bill. And again, this bill did not meet a good fate. And it's unbelievable that it didn't meet a good fate. But whenever you start digging into some of these characters, I guess it's not as unbelievable.
Yeah, well, you're right. Because it was a robust piece of legislation designed to ensure and protect the academic freedom of faculty members and professors in post-secondary schools across the state. And I think Representative Owen brought the bill. I'm not sure whether you and I ever had this discussion, Danielle, whether or not Foresta Imami, whether her case influenced his decision to bring the legislation. But Foresta Imami, as you know and our listeners know, was the one who suffered very significant reprisal at Southeastern because she publicly disclosed the results of her
Yeah.
research into all of the toxins and metals and poison in Lake Maurepas. And boy, the big corporations, and I believe it was either Capture Point, or I can't think of the name of the big corporation, but one of the big CCS
Air
companies,
gas.
Airgas, yeah, paid for this study, and it was commissioned by them, and the university then put Foresta Imami on it. She was head of the research team. She did comprehensive study into what is at the bottom or in Lake Maurepas, and boy, the results were absolutely horrifying. And she disclosed those results. Well, that didn't meet well. They were expecting a very different result, and so she suffered very significant retaliation at her school. William Most is representing her in litigation over that. So Representative Owen brings this legislation to prevent precisely that sort of heavy-handedness on academic freedom in universities in Louisiana. It passed out of the House Education Committee in very, very good form. We were strongly in favor there, and we thought that this bill has got to be on its way to passage. And as we now know, Danielle, that's not the result. The bill was seriously gutted on the House floor. Originally, the bill said that if you retaliate against a professor for the exercise of their free speech, not only do you get to be sued for it, but you could have to pay $500,000 in punitive damages. The bill was retroactive, which means it would go back and cover the case of Foresta Imami, where she would have an opportunity to seek redress under its terms. But it was gutted so badly on the House floor, it's basically toothless now. And there's, interestingly enough, just to finish it off on the House floor, because of all the pushback from all the higher-ups in academia, politically correct higher-ups in academia, I should say, not ones who are really devoted to principles of First Amendment freedom. There's a provision in the bill that says, nothing in this legislation shall be construed to disparage or derogate the right of a university to take appropriate action if any words or speech or actions on the part of a faculty member violate I can't think the professional code or the standards of
Code
professional
of conduct. Yeah.
as determined through university policy. So basically, you can say what you want, you can generally do what you want, as long as it doesn't violate our own policy that we have made, that more often than not not only does not guarantee full First Amendment protections, but actually narrows it and makes sure that you're almost in a straitjacket in what you say. These policies that they write.
I was going to say, it
Yeah.
sounds like they are elevating the code of conduct of a university above the Constitution.
Well, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's just unfortunate that so the legislation really does, in its current form, more or less, not only does it not defend fundamental constitutional expression, it actually it makes the situation potentially even worse, because it codifies statutorily a university's right basically to implement whatever policy they want on their campuses with regard to free speech and academic expression, that's almost beyond the reach of review, almost beyond the reach of review. And I just think this is very sad. And Danielle, I know it was the institutional academic bureaucracy, the ones that were schooled in a particular way of thinking, in a particular political ideology, and they absolutely suppress speech that is outside those parameters.
Well, Chris,
And
I don't know if you remember what you told me when you got back home from the legislature the day that they gutted it so badly, but you said that the real objection behind the scenes was, and I don't know if this came out on the House floor, the number of lawsuits, the flood of lawsuits that the state would not be able to sustain because the violations are so numerous and so egregious.
well, yes, but that could have been solved. I didn't want this to happen, but that problem could have been solved by simply removing the retroactivity
Yeah.
provision by saying that this is proactive from now on going forward. Now you know what the rules are. Now you understand that you are to zealously guard the fundamental constitutional rights of your faculty members and your teachers. We're not going to look back. The past is the past. We're going
Yeah.
to go forward. They could have done that way, but they didn't. They gutted this retroactively and prospectively going forward is what they did. Basically, this was a big FU to anybody who would hold them to a standard of constitutional accountability when it comes to the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. That's exactly what this is, a big FU. And the reason why it alarms me so much, Danielle, is that George Washington famously said that even if you erode other constitutional provisions, the country can survive and has more time to address those issues. But the moment you erode the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, the moment the government stands up and says, there are certain things that you can say, there are certain things that you can't say, there are certain things that we have already arbitrarily determined are true and false. And so if you say those things, you are subject to penalty or reprisal. The moment you start doing that with the First Amendment, the government starts doing that, like sheep to the slaughter, we shall all be led. That was Washington. That is how important the First Amendment was to our founders. And this bill was an exercise, I think, in really the stranglehold that the left has on our academic institutions in Louisiana and really throughout the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to round out what happened with the bill, it passed House Ed with just technical amendments. I think you said it was pretty clean, 11-0. Passed the House floor with significant amendments. That's where it got gutted. But everyone voted for it after it was rendered almost meaningless. And then it still had legs, but it died in Senate Judiciary A in a 4-1 vote. And we want to give credit where credit is due. Only Senator Alan Seabaugh voted for it in that committee.
And I think Senator Seabaugh, to his credit, voted for it out of principle. You know, but in its final form, Danielle, the bill really does not offer any protection that's not currently offered. What
Yeah.
we needed a bill that puts these schools on notice that just because a professor expresses opinions or whose whose research yields results that you don't agree with or that are not in conformity with your prevailing narrative, they deserve the exact same degree of protection as any other belief, any other expression, any other idea, and we have to guard that in a sacred way. As Abraham Lincoln would say, we have to guard that with the purity of our souls. Every expression, every idea, every thought expressed on a campus must be protected. That's not where we are, Danielle. And the outcome of this legislation, I think, is a very stark reminder that that is not where we are.
It is a stark reminder, Chris, but as you were talking about the fact that this needed to send a signal, there are other ways to send signals. You know, AG Liz Murrell could make a statement that says, guess what? Listen up, folks. This is how it's going to be. We're going to enforce the Constitution. And if any professor or any teacher in this state has faced some kind of problem with regard to the suppression of their speech, you call my office. That would send a signal.
It would send a signal, absolutely, if they did that. The important thing about 1008 is that it gave a statutory legislative voice to these violations and created truly onerous penalties for the
Yeah.
violation of it. So worst case scenario now, Danielle, if someone has their free speech rights violated, they can file a suit, go to court, maybe get an injunction, maybe get their costs paid. But this bill in original form would have caused these administrators to look up and say, we're going to get hit with a very fat bat if we violate
Yeah.
First Amendment protections on this campus.
Got
Here it
it.
is. Here's the law. We can't afford this. We have got to begin to straighten up on this and begin to do what's right. So that's why I'm so disappointed that this legislation didn't get through, because it just was a very, very heavy hit.
Yeah.
And they, of course, as you know, it ended up dying.
Yeah, and in the chat here on Rumble, Power Giant 60 says if federal and state funding is involved in these institutions, then the constitutions should prevail. And I guess, Chris, that's really what you just addressed, that yes, you could win a lawsuit, but you want the stick to be bigger than that.
And the thing about having legislation like this, the one who just shouted in is exactly right about that. But the thing about, if this legislation had passed and was signed in its original form, Danielle, we would rarely come to a point where we would have to have someone spend $100,000 to William Most to represent them to go in and have their
Yeah.
constitutional rights vindicated. These things would be cut off on the front end. The deterrent effect of a bill like this in original form would be very, very powerful, because the writing's on the wall, the parameters are very clearly outlined, and here it is. And so I think it would prevent a lot of lawsuits. It's kind of similar, Danielle, to the situation with carbon capture and sequestration. Yes, someone who has a corporation coming on their land and wanting to bury these pipelines and all this waste on their property,
Yeah.
yes, they can have their constitutional rights vindicated. 3 years and $100,000 later,
Yeah,
yes,
and maybe after their property is completely destroyed.
yes. And in this case, maybe after the academic reputation of a good American citizen is destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. That's why having legislation in place is so important.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. All right, well, we'll move on to my favorite bills, my top three. And Chris, you knew immediately what these were because you have heard from me. I can't even count the number of hours I had you on the phone talking about fluoride and explaining the evils of fluoride in our water system. But Senate Bill 4 by Senator Facey was going to address the fluoride that is being put into water systems across the state of Louisiana. Not all of the water systems in Louisiana, by the way, are mandated to have this. That you have to meet certain population requirements. The waterworks companies have to meet certain population requirements. But I am in one of those districts where fluoride is forced upon us. And Senator Facey said that he brought this bill because he felt that it was an informed consent issue, that the public is not informed about what they are taking, and this is a chemical compound, it's a medicine, they are not consenting to. We're just being forced by the legislature through previous legislation to consume this. And what I've told you before, Chris, what does fluoride do? I've talked to this very brilliant doctor at length about fluoride. He hates it. He said that when he goes to the dentist, he tells them that he's so allergic to fluoride, he's going to go into anaphylactic shock. They'll have to call the ambulance. Don't get any fluoride near him. That's how seriously he feels about the issue.
I
But
bet
what
they're
he
not giving him any fluoride.
No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are. But he explained to me that fluoride does a couple of really harmful things. One, we know it's very common knowledge, I believe, among people who are kind of awake in the health space, that fluoride lowers the IQ of children. It has very deleterious effects on the neurological development of children. So that in and of itself should be enough to say, hey, folks, let's stop poisoning the future. Let's stop poisoning our kids. It also has extremely toxic effects on the thyroid. Fluoride pushes out iodine from the body, which is needed for all kinds of hormone function. So if you are struggling with a thyroid issue, if you know someone who's struggling with a thyroid issue, fluoride may be the culprit. So anyway, those are a couple of the reasons. You know, there are many, many more reasons that I can't stand fluoride. Also, iodine is really, really vital for heart health. This doctor explained to me that the number one cause of heart disease is not high cholesterol. It's an iodine deficiency. And you would have an iodine deficiency because you have taken in too much fluoride and the fluoride has pushed out your iodine. So it's a very, very pernicious pernicious thing that they're doing to us. And the fact that we have to pass a bill to get them to stop poisoning us is so insane to me. I can't even stand myself. This bill started out as a blanket prohibition, just stop poisoning us. That should have passed no problem. However, these dentists are so indoctrinated. I don't think that they're evil. I just think they're indoctrinated, right? They spent a lot of money to go to this fancy school that told them that fluoride is going to cure the world. And if fluoride is not put into the water systems, all these children, all the poor children are going to have their teeth rot out.
The same,
Well,
Danielle, excuse me, one second. The same school, and indoctrination that taught them that it's high cholesterol that is the
yeah.
leading cause of heart damage instead of an iodine deficiency. The same background and training, right?
I would think those, yeah, I would think so. So he could not get the bill through in a clean form. So what he had to do was, well, what he did was he said, you know what, we're just going to flip what the bill says. And so now we're going to have what, a 15% required. This put me like, I almost went into orbit when I saw how this bill ended up. 15% of the voting population of a district that gets fluoride has to do a petition to have a vote to get the fluoride out of the water. I was like, are you kidding me? Why should we have to work so hard? Anyway, it got amended. It did get out of committee without objection after that because the bar was so high. On the Senate floor, it got an amendment that took the trigger, the 15% petition, 15% requirement to get a petition, whatever.
Which is good as far as that went. Which is
Yeah,
good as far as
so
that went.
now, and let's see, it passed 26-7. Only the Democrats voted against it. And then it moved on through House Health and Welfare, 13-0 without amendments. There were a couple House Republicans who voted against it, who I do want to name here shortly. But the moral of the story is it did end up getting out of the House and going to it's now with the governor for signature. I need to double check. I checked yesterday, but I haven't checked this morning to see if the governor signed it yet. The
So
troubling,
as you do that, Danielle, let me just clarify what you're
yeah,
saying. So
go ahead.
as the bill stands now, and pursuant to conversations that we've had very recently with the author, Senator Facey, there will be an automatic mandated local vote, up or down, on whether or not to keep fluoride in the local water systems. That vote will be mandated. It no longer requires a petition drive to get 15%
Yeah,
of the local residents just to get it on a ballot, which is
right.
very, very good, I think. So there will be an automatic vote. Now, of course, there will have to be a lot of public awareness raised regarding the harms of fluoride to get it passed. But I think it's in a better position than it was with that 15% threshold on there for sure.
It is. And one point that remains, Chris, and you can clean up whatever mess I make of this, but the Louisiana Department of Health, the authority does lie with them to determine, to set the amount of fluoride that is deemed healthy or acceptable for dental health in the state of Louisiana. So there is the small window of hope that would, the vote may not have to take place is that EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin has issued, I believe in January or February of this year, a rapid review of fluoride's effect on neurological development in children and on dental health. Because there are studies that have shown that it doesn't even help dental health. So it's a literature review. It's not a new, it's a study of studies. And
Yeah.
so we expect that there should be results published anytime now. I don't know what a rapid review means. They haven't set out any dates to give us an expectation of what to expect. But I would certainly hope that if the EPA comes back and says, guess what, folks, this is toxic poison. You're poisoning the people. Stop it. We recommend you stop it. I would certainly hope that under Dr. Evelyn Griffin's guidance, with the blessing of Governor Landry, we would stop poisoning the people and it wouldn't require a vote to stop poisoning the people.
Well said, Danielle. And I would argue that there really is a strong basis right now for the Louisiana Department of Health to take action on this just based upon
Yeah.
the preliminary data
Yeah.
that we know from the federal government. They could do it right now, but certainly if there are additional formal findings that come down that establish precisely the concerns that you've been raising here, I think the Louisiana Department of Health would be absolutely obligated, both ethically and really constitutionally at that point, to take real action. The only disadvantage to doing this administratively while killing legislation like the bill that we're
Yeah.
talking about now is that the very next administration that comes in could, with the stroke of a pen, repeal that state administrative decree and go back right back to where we were before. In other words, it wouldn't carry forward necessarily to the next administration. Whereas if you were to pass a law, it's codified from here to eternity unless that statute is repealed, which is which is much harder to do than it is simply to repeal an executive decree. So that's really the advantage of
So,
getting
Chris,
the
the
bill through.
difference would be, or the strategy should be, that we could get if we were able to get the result from Administrator Zeldin and Dr. Griffin were to say 0% is okay, stop doing it. Then we go and have a vote on it.
Immediately,
I
immediately.
immediately, so people would understand that this is poison and you are just codifying the fact that you want to keep the poison out forever. That would be the best way this should be sequenced.
No question. And if it were sequenced that way, you get the formal finding from the feds, then you have action on the state level in the form of an executive decree. Can you imagine having that kind of leverage when you go in before a House Health and Welfare Committee and seeing how the Republicans are going to vote there? That's a whole different atmosphere than going in there under current circumstances. I guarantee you that despite the weight that the Dental Association has before these committees, if we were to go in with the kind of authority that you're talking about now, if we're having, I think that they would have to vote in favor of strong legislation at that point.
Well, I was just talking about, since the bill says that the people have to vote, the local people have to
Well,
vote.
sure. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying I misunderstood what you were saying, but that's exactly right. And that would be a way to go. Also, in other words, expedite the local vote the moment we get
Yes.
firm federal guidance on this. In
Yeah.
other words, federal guidance, then you have the LDH Act, and then you immediately push for the local vote. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree with you. That's absolutely a viable alternative. But by the same token, it would also be a good opportunity to go in and absolutely cut this thing out at the roots in the legislature as well
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it should be. It should absolutely be done. And let me just name the Republicans who voted against this bill, and the Democrats who voted in favor of it. So Barbara Freiberg, Bo Boyer, Daryl Desitel, Debbie Villio, Jeremy Lacombe, Jerome Zarang, that's Z Zarang, Lori Schlegel, Les Barnum, Mike Bayham, and Vincent Cox all voted to not to get the toxins out of the water and not to let the people vote on getting the toxins out of the water.
Danielle, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to take a privilege and ask you to please say those names one more time because it's very important. This will be the first in a many times that we mention the names of Republicans who directly and as a matter of public record acted against the interest of Louisiana citizens. So I think it's incumbent upon us to say those names one more time, if you
And I
don't mind.
just want to reiterate, they did not vote to get the fluoride out of the water. They did not vote against getting the fluoride out of the water. They voted against allowing the people to vote as to whether they wanted to continue to be poisoned. So that to me
Absolutely.
is even more egregious. You can
Exactly.
have your opinion, but let the people vote on it
Let the people
themselves.
vote on it because that strikes directly at the heart of constitutional government. That strikes directly at the heart of what our founding fathers believed in, the principle of subsidiarity. The government that is closest to the people is the government that is most likely to reflect the will of the people. And what government is closest to the people in this situation? It's the local government in Terrebonne Parish, or in Caddo Parish, or in Livingston Parish. It's not the state legislature. So these Republicans really committed a grave affront, not just because of this particular legislation. They committed an affront to a core principle of constitutional governance, which is why I invite them and continue to invite them simply to switch their party affiliation. Although that is really doing an injustice to some of the Democrats who
That's right.
actually were on the right side of this issue.
Correct. So the Republicans who voted against giving the people the right to self-determine whether they're going to be continue to be poisoned or not are Barbara Freiberg, Bo Boye, Daryl Desatel, Debbie Villio, Jeremy Lacombe, Z Zarang, Lori Schlegel, Les Farnham, Mike Bayham, and Vincent Cox. The Democrats who voted in favor of letting people self-determine were Delisha Boyd and Terry Landry Jr.
So Delisha Boyd and Terry Landry on the Democrat side, thank you for
Yeah.
seeing the importance of this issue and for voting to allow local municipalities to make this determination on this very important issue. You acted more like a foundational Republican than all of these Republicans that were named just now. So we need to remember the names of those Republicans and always eager to give Democrats credit where credit is due.
Trust me, I will remember those names. All right, Chris, the next one that was my also on my favorite list also did not meet the kind of fate that I hoped it would make. Didn't even meet the kind of fate that I thought it would make, which is really disappointing. Also by Senator Facey, Senate Bill 152. It was his prohibition on cell-cultured meat for human consumption in Louisiana. It prohibited the manufacture, distribution, sale, or offer for sale of cell-cultured foods.
Before you get into that, Danielle, can you explain to the viewers,
Yeah.
because I know that you're a master at this, you know this, what is that? Because I didn't know before you explained that to me. So what is that? Why is it so important that not be put on the market?
This is lab-grown meat. This is what you're seeing Jeff Bezos do with basically like he's created some kind of eggs in a lab. They use the cell lines of animal tissue and somehow grow it into, an approximation of that and sell it as food. And to me, this is going down the lines of you'll have nothing and be happy, right? First they wanted us to eat insects. Now they're coming up with this Franken food for us to eat. I will say I'm very pleased that Representative Rodney Shammerhorn put together a bill that ran before this one to protect people, but precisely because he saw coming down the line the kind of shenanigans that did ultimately happen with this bill. But his bill was to ensure that all of the products are clearly labeled if they make it into the grocery store, if they make it into restaurants. Why do I have such a strong feeling about not wanting lab-grown meat in Louisiana? I've heard people say, this is a freedom, you should have the freedom to choose whether you want to eat it or not. Perhaps you should have the freedom to choose. But what if you find out 5 years down the line that it's extremely toxic and poisonous? I think what this is one, it's an assault on farmers because it's absolutely entering a space that there should be no competition for meat with some fake technology. So I think it's an assault on farmers. But I also think that this is something where it's going to try and drive down prices, right? There's going to be a huge price differential in the market. And what that's going to do is the people who are trying to be more thrifty will go to the market and they will buy this. And they may or may not know of the health benefits, or the health concerns, or they may not even realize.
Danielle, because the label, as you talked about, and God bless Representative Shammerhorn for bringing that, because who knows where the warning label is on the package.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't think we need to put the most vulnerable of us at risk. Also, would really like to know if I go to a restaurant, am I getting real meat? You have to call it what it is. Don't, if it's cell cultured meat, I don't want it. I don't want it. So,
Danielle, if a restaurant, even, we're not talking about, economically challenged or thrifty people. If a restaurant can pass something off as real and make it taste, relatively good or good enough not to turn away customers and save 80% of what they would be spending
right.
on real meat, restaurants are going to be doing the same thing.
Well, exactly. And we already know they do stuff like this, Chris, because I live in South Louisiana. There are restaurants that say that they are selling fresh Gulf shrimp, shrimp that are domestic. Guess what? They're not. They're importing from Vietnam,
Wow.
and under very terrible toxic conditions that those shrimp are raised in. So no, I don't trust this at all. I don't want any part of this. And I was so proud that Senator Facey was bringing this bill. I was so happy to see that it was moving through the legislature without too much problem. However, you alerted me yesterday, and I cannot believe we missed this, Chris. I
Well, we
just
didn't, Danielle. We didn't. No, no, no. With all respect, you didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. This was a very, very, very late amendment that was
was
put
it.
on this. Yes. So you didn't miss anything. But I
So
found it when we were doing our pre-show review.
I know, but when did the amendment happen, Chris?
Well, this happened on. I think it was one of the last things that was done on the Senate floor. It was a Senate floor amendment by Senator Kathy, and
Yeah,
then it
but we
went
could
back.
have, well,
Well,
we
that's
could have
true.
hopefully known something and done
Yeah,
something
when it went
about it
back
in the
over to the
House.
House for concurrence. Yeah, that's right.
However, we do know that if Senator Kathy was the head of the Agriculture Committee, he may have just made it. Well, I don't know. Who knows?
It
What
specifically said floor amendment, Danielle. This was a floor amendment.
That's right. So would you just talk about what the floor amendment did, because it enrages me. It enrages me. I think Senator Kathy had no business to do this. I would like to know what drove Senator Kathy to do this, because he is stripping away the protections for the entirety of the public of Louisiana by his amendment to this bill, and it is unacceptable.
This one amendment took the bill from being in very strong posture with an absolute prohibition against this in our food to basically gutting it because it said that this law will only become enforceable upon a final decision by the United States Supreme Court that lab created meat and all the things we're talking about here. No, no, that the prohibition on this is constitutional. Essentially, he's putting the enforcement of the bill on hold, awaiting a decision by the United States Supreme Court to decide basically whether it's okay or not to go forward with this. Because there's litigation going on, Danielle, among various states on the federal level, arguing about whether or not it is constitutional or unconstitutional to preemptively prohibit someone who wants to produce this and sell this from doing so in what is supposed to be a free economy. You've cited very compelling societal interests in doing just that. I fall on the same side with you that the government absolutely has a core interest in prohibiting this altogether. But the point is, it's being litigated, and there have been some conflicting decisions among the various circuits. At some point, this could get to the United States Supreme Court, and they could make an ultimate decision. But it may never get there. But there's nothing right now on the federal level that should prevent the immediate passage and enforcement of this prohibition, for the very reason that any bill that is passed and signed is presumed constitutional until and unless successfully challenged. There is no law anywhere right now that has declared this bill in Louisiana unconstitutional. And so I think that they should have gone forward. This is one of those situations where if you had a Ron DeSantis and a Florida legislature, they would have said, first of all, we are our own sovereign. We don't have to wait on the federal government. We don't constantly have to defer to what the federal government is doing before we can make a decision that's in the best interest of our own people. Look at how many things the federal government has screwed up. Have they not squandered their right to be afforded that kind of automatic acquiescence? every time they do something, every time they sneeze. No, they've lost that a long time ago. But from a legal and constitutional point of view, there's no reason why this bill should not go forward as it was originally written and signed and be enforced. And if they want to challenge it here, that's a challenge because of what is at stake here that our Attorney General in our state should be willing to meet. But no, it's just this reflexive, preemptive surrender to what the federal government and the Supreme Court may or may not ultimately say about this. I think it's very, very sad. I think it's very unfortunate. And Danielle, the effect really is to kill the legislation.
And I have some direct questions I want answered, Chris. I want to know why Senator Facey accepted this amendment. He did not have to. He did not have to. If you're on the Senate floor, you can say, no, I don't want this amendment. Can he not?
Of course he could. Of course he could do that. Now, at that point, you run the risk of losing.
The bill was being killed anyway.
Exactly. I mean, the bottom line is the way it looks right now. You may as well not have brought. And I say this with all due respect to Senator Facey, because I think Senator Facey is I think he means well. But this guts the bill. This basically eviscerates the legislation that he himself had worked hard on to get to the floor. So it's because it can't be enforced. It cannot be enforced.
And I want Senator Kathy to answer why. Get up and give an explanation for why you want to take away the protection of people for this lab-grown meat. What interest are you serving, Senator Kathy? Do you have some of these companies that are working in your district? Do you have some of these companies that are donating to your campaign? Do you have some of these universities that are in your ear wanting to study this stuff? Because I think it's absolutely reprehensible.
Right. And the questions I would ask Senator Kathy, I would say, first question would be, Senator Kathy, has the United States Supreme Court made a determination that this law or this bill is unconstitutional? No. Has any federal court with jurisdiction over the state of Louisiana formally declared that this legislation is unconstitutional? No. So my final question would be, why then, Senator Kathy, do you not presume on the side of constitutionality, as really you're required to do, and proceed aggressively to protect the health and welfare of Louisiana citizens? Why are you preemptively deferring to what apparently you believe will ultimately be a decision somewhere down the line by a federal court in Louisiana that this bill is unconstitutional? So you're going to wait and do nothing until we get a ruling affirming what you think, but what may or may not ever happen. Once again, Danielle, this is the type of posture and approach to legislation that has Louisiana citizens so extraordinarily frustrated.
Yeah.
And I don't know I have no idea who donates to Senator Kathy. I have no idea how entrenched he may be here on the side of the people who oppose this. But that is absolutely a question worth asking. You're exactly right.
And I'm not going to forget about this. I just want people to know I'm not going to forget about this, because if you have a problem with it on the merits, then talk about the problem on the merits. Don't put some bogus amendment in there that's going to hamstring this thing so the people can't be protected.
Because on the face of it, Danielle, on the surface of it, if people didn't know what they were talking about, Senator Kathy would sell it this way. Look, there's conflicts, in the federal circuits about whether or not this is legal. So we're going to wait for a decision to see what the Supreme Court weighs in on it, and then we'll proceed depending on what they say. That sounds good on the surface, but there's no requirement that we do that. And when we're talking about an issue of this importance, whether or not we're going to be producing basically fake meat that it could potentially be very, very harmful to our citizens, could drive the cattle industry out of business, our meat producers out of business, those types of issues. We don't sit around and wait for what the federal government does. That's not what we're supposed to be doing.
And I didn't see him bring this kind of amendment to the redistricting bill.
Well, exactly. What a great point. What a great point. Now, to his credit, Senator Kathy voted against SB8. He voted against the Cleo Fields racial gerrymander. I'm 99% sure. I know he did, in fact. But nonetheless, where was this argument then? let's hold off here and just continue with the current district we have, because who knows, the Supreme Court might one day declare this district unconstitutional. So we certainly can't go forward with it now. That would have been a powerful argument then, because guess what? We did send a radical Democrat to the Congress, threatening the balance of power in the U.S. Congress based upon that bill. And the Supreme Court ultimately did declare it illegal. So if there was ever a place for this type of argument, Senator Caffey, it would have been in that case. Where were you then? Why are you doing it now?
All right, I'll move on, but I just let the record state I'm super angry about this. All right, the next bill, my third and final favorite bill, Chris, out of all of these bills, all of our favorite bills, did only one of them make it through? I didn't know this episode was going to be so enraging. I thought we have better news.
Well, Daniel, to be honest with you, but we have to keep in mind, we're picking. You and I are absolute constitutional conservatives, and we view everything strictly and solely through the prism of the Constitution and through the prism of whether or not it is good policy for citizens. Period. We don't have any other considerations. So bills that are at the very top tier for us are by necessity bills that would receive sort of a natural anathema or resistance from institutional rhinos in our legislature, just by necessity. So it doesn't really surprise me that our top favorite bills would have been defeated. There's a tier of bills that come below that we also like very much, that we pushed hard to get through. But this is pure legislation that really is faithful to the heart of the citizens and good policy. So it disappoints me, it doesn't surprise me that we do not have a legislature yet that reflects that type of collective fidelity to the Constitution. But it's disappointing.
It is disappointing. But this bill did make it through, so we're going to end on a high note, and it is Senate Bill 185 by Senator Thomas Presley, and it is a bill that he brought, which will be called Trey's Law. It's already enacted in places like Texas and Missouri. It simply says that children who are victims of sexual abuse cannot be party to a non-disclosure agreement that silences them from talking about their abuse. And I think it's a very powerful bill. It's an important bill for the rights of victims. It's an important bill, really, to make sure that these big institutional organizations, the one that it was specifically addressing in its original intent, not this bill specifically, but the model bill that this was based on, was addressing a horrific series and really a track record, or just an absolute sewage. I don't even know how to say it, but this camp Kanakuk in Missouri, this very high-end, very expensive, elite Christian camp, was rife with child sexual abuse, and they had so much money that there were children for years and years and years that were forced into these NDAs and settlement agreements that were never able to speak about it. The woman who created this model legislation, I think in partnership with Senator Ted Cruz originally, her brother committed suicide as a result of his struggles with not being able to really address what happened to him. So I think this is an important bill, and I was very impressed to see Senator Presley bring it. Very pleased that he did. I think he was the right legislator for the job. He did a very good job of that, Chris, I think you would say. And it did make it all the way through the legislature without objection, thankfully.
Yes. Danielle, I'll just say this. I have personal knowledge of cases where very severe abuse has been perpetrated on minors from a young age, has allowed to continue even after the authority or the institution that governs the perpetrator was made aware of it.
Yeah.
And appropriate action was never taken. It was ignored. It was covered up, and quiet settlements were made, which include in them an absolute prohibition, as you said, on a victim ever being able to talk about the gravity of that abuse in order to protect the institution that had committed such horrendous acts. And that's why I think Senator Presley's legislation was so important. Never again will a victim, will the injustice that has been done to a child be compounded by another injustice, which tells them on the way out the door, here's some money, keep your damn mouth shut for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That is why I think this bill is so very important.
Yeah, because if kids were, for instance, at Kanakuk able to speak up, the abuse would not have gone on as long as it did. It went on years and years. It spanned multiple decades, Chris, and I would say probably very similarly to the to things we've seen at like the Catholic Church, for instance. It's very important that people are able to warn families that this is going on so that they can make appropriate choices. It's just unbelievable.
Because you can't count on either the religious institutions or the secular institutions, these powerful, powerful institutions, to do what is necessary, even when this information and evidence is brought to light. You
Yeah.
cannot count on them unilaterally to do what must be done to prevent it from happening in the future. And oftentimes, the only Paul Revere, the only voice there is the voice of the actual victim and their families. So I give Senator Presley a lot of credit for getting this bill across the finish line, and I think it's very needed.
Yeah, and I'll give a lot of credit to the legislature as well for not there was no one that voted against it the whole way, and that's exactly how it should be. And frankly, we should see more bills like that are protecting people and protecting the interests of the people. So
Absolutely.
with that, I'll just make a couple of announcements, Chris. On Tuesday, we'll have Professor David Clements with us. Lots of stuff that's been going on that I don't know what he's exactly going to want to weigh in on, but we know that I believe he's close with Tina Peters. I'm sure he'll want to talk about her release in some way. There's been a lot happening on the federal level with respect to elections and federal corruption being uncovered. I believe this morning, as early as this morning or as late as this morning, President Trump has said that he would nominate acting AG Todd Blanche to the role of full-time AG. So I'm sure he'll have some perspective that he might want to share on that. I think another interesting thing that's happened in the last, excuse me, the last couple of days is the housing administrator, Bill Pulte, being pulled in as acting DNI. To me, that's just one, if you watch the left swirl around as they scream and clutch their pearls, it's the most beautiful sight, just absolutely beautiful, because he is, in a way, what he's done is uncover fraud, and that fraud, we know, Chris, from some of our conversations right here on this show, reaches right into the coffers of Act Blue and Win Red, which means that he's coming. He's coming for the Congress. And I can't wait for that.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you, bad boys?
All right.
I hope you're right. I hope
No,
you're right, and I
I'm
think
pretty
you are.
sure. I'm pretty sure I am. And then on Thursday, I think we don't have it 100% nailed down yet, but we should have some news back from Paul Hurd and Bert Calle on the redistricting the lawsuit. I guess it's not a countersuit. It's just a suit on the latest
Yeah.
map saying that it too is a racial gerrymander. I know I spoke with Paul yesterday. He was expecting some kind of communication back from the federal court yesterday on next steps, but he didn't seem to feel like they might be willing to take it up because of some recent activities at SCOTUS. So
Yeah. Now,
we,
Paul's still his view, though, Danielle. I didn't speak to him yesterday, but it's your
yeah,
understanding that his view remains that SB 121 is an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. That hasn't
100%.
changed, right?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't, and he believes he will win if and when he gets his hearing.
Well, I wouldn't bet against it.
No, I wouldn't bet against him. And we'll be seeing more of Paul here, and you'll be hearing more from Paul on our Substack as well. I believe we're really excited that he's going to be doing some work with us here in the next couple weeks and months. So stay tuned. It'll be great to have his wisdom and tenacity as, you know, contributing here. So,
Absolutely.
all right,
Well, Danielle,
Chris.
I want to encourage people, just remember,
Yeah.
donate to LeCag, support LeCag, support the state of freedom. We are fighting your battles for you. Get some skin in the game here. There
Yeah.
is no voice for you like ours, and I will say it with absolute confidence, without a trace of arrogance. There is no voice like ours. Freedomstate.us, lacag.org. If there was ever a place where you should be investing your resources, it is toward the preservation of your freedom, your liberty, and your rights. And we are fighting like warriors for you. And we need your support and we need your help. So make sure that you do that. And always know as well, Danielle, that people are always free to email. I always
Yeah.
forget to remind people. Chris, Chris, at lacag.org for LeCag, and then Danielle at freedomstate.us. Anytime you want to reach out to us, please feel free to do so. We love speaking with people. We're just people. We're just people, Danielle. It's the bottom line. I love people. I know you do. And I think that's one of the things that gives us good symmetry here, because we both really love people. I love the heart and the soul of people. So God bless you, Danielle. I got to tell you, it's always, well, I was going to say it's always a small slice of heaven being with you, but it's a relatively large slice of heaven today, because it's an hour and I don't have my glasses on.
26 minutes.
Hour and 26 minutes in, it always seems like it just goes by so quickly. But what a great opportunity to be with you.
Yeah, what a great opportunity today, Chris. And thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us. A couple of things that I'd love to hear from you. One is, what do you want to hear from us on? We have so many topics that we've covered, so many issues that we've covered during the legislative session. We have full intentions of going through all of them one by one, but we want to hear, what are your priorities? What matters to you to hear from us about? And we'll put that at the top of the stack. And then the other thing I'll mention, Chris, is this. I get emails from our software company that does the podcasting, and they had a big podcasting summit recently. And the report out was that niche podcasts like ours that are targeting people who care about a certain subject matter. For us, it's the policies of what's happening in Louisiana and then at the federal level as well. Are a much higher ROI for sponsors, and that's because their viewer base is very dedicated, very loyal, and really committed to the cause. And so I would just say, for anyone listening or watching who is a business owner in Louisiana or somewhere else, but you want to sell your products in Louisiana, reach out to us. And if you know someone who would be a good fit for advertising with us, let us know. So Chris already gave our email addresses: Chris at lacag.org, Danielle at freedomstate.us. But y'all reach out to us. We would love to be able to promote God-fearing, country-loving, state-loving people.
And I want to emphasize, Danielle, that we don't promote anything that we do not believe in.
Yeah.
That's always been our principle. For the same reason that LeCag does not accept money from multi-billion-dollar corporations. We don't do it because we know that it always comes with strings attached.
Yeah.
And our voice is never going to be compromised. That's the very same reason why the state of freedom does not accept advertising contracts from big multi-billion-dollar corporations, because we do not want to have any extraneous influence that quells or influences our voice for the people. And that's exactly why it is so important that we offset that with small monthly memberships from citizens across the state. This really is a David and Goliath scenario, Danielle. And
Yeah.
I could not be happier than to be on the side with David.
That's right. That's right. Well, God bless you, Chris. We will be back here at 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday with Professor Clements. So y'all be sure to tune in, set the reminder, hit the notification button so you won't miss it. I know it'll be a great one as always.
And in the words of the immortal William F. Buckley Jr., one of my heroes, Danielle, in vain we shall go.
All right, Chris. Have a great one.
You too.
Red Zeppelin is the best kept secret, but because of us, it's really not a secret anymore. Anybody who has not been to Red Zeppelin on Perkins Road in Baton Rouge, you're truly missing out. The best environment, the best service, and the best pizza in the state of Louisiana. Go to Red Zeppelin today. Tell them the State of Freedom sent you. Pokey Claw, right here in Mid-City in Baton Rouge. It's Baton Rouge's newest claw machine arcade. Jenin absolutely loves it. Packed with Pokemon gear and fun for all ages. You got to go to Pokey Claw. I love it. Jenin wants to go there every Saturday. It's just a wonderful place to go for the family, for the kids. Pokey Claw.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.